All right. Welcome, everyone. Full house. All right. Thanks, everyone, for coming out, especially after lunch. So everyone is caffeinated, fed, and ready to tackle the topic of the day, which is AI, ChatGPT, and the implications for security. I'm George Kamide with Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks. I will be moderating the panel, but I'm going to ask the panel to introduce themselves in a unique way, which is just quickly tell everyone who you are and tell us something that you have asked or you know someone has asked of ChatGPT lately.
Okay. Hey everyone, this is Esra Al-Shawafi. I'm an IC2 board member, and my engineers always throw in code and ChatGPT, and they always complain that it's not showing them what they actually want. They just want to, box it into the dev environment and just not do anything about it, which is not happening right now. So.
All right.
Hi everyone, I'm Pam Lindemoen, and I work for Cisco. I'm a CISO advisor. On my personal laptop, I got a call from my mentee. She's actually my goddaughter. Please no one tell her I did this. But she asked for a letter of referral for her university, and I had 4 hours to do it. And so I put it in ChatGPT, and I said, I want to say this, I want to say this, I want to say this. Boom. Let me tell you, it wrote it better than I would have ever written it. And so I submitted it, and I sent it to her. I said, hey, I submitted this. And she said to me, she was like, oh, I have tears in my eyes. It was so good. I did not have the heart to tell her that it was ChatGPT.
Hi, that was a funny one. My name is Sherifat Akinwonmi, and I'm a BISO with TD Bank. And I haven't personally used ChatGPT, so to you as well, my personal laptop. But I've got my mentees asking. So one of them wanted to reach out to someone on LinkedIn, and he was like, I'm just going to put it on ChatGPT. Write me, an introductory message to a CISO or something. And ChatGPT gave him something he could use. So that was very useful for him. And then another person was going to do an interview for an incident response role for a SOC analyst. And I asked her to practice by writing up an incident response plan for a malware attack. And she went to ChatGPT. Well, I could detect that easily, so those were my experiences.
Hi, my name is Helen Oakley, and I'm lead security architect at SAP, and I'm also co-founder of Leading Cyber Ladies, so you've probably seen the booth. And I use ChatGPT in a more the hacking side of things. Definitely try different stuff, but jailbreaking it is fun, but have to use it with caution. And you can pretty much get a lot of fun responses with jailbreaking because it does abstract it from the rules and ethics in some cases, but one warning that everyone needs to take it with a grain of salt when you do that, because first of all, it's not anything that is true that AI is doing, you're just manipulating the answers in that way. But it's definitely fun from the research perspective.
Great. All right. So for those of you taking notes, personal laptop, and give your recommenders more than 4 hours notice. Okay, so for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to take the holy trinity of cybersecurity, which is people, process, and technology, and we're going to invert it. So we're going to start at the technology layer, work through implications for processing, and then end with the carbon-based life forms that you see before you and in this room. So my first question is, Einstein famously said that if I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on it, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. And Helen, you brought up jailbreaking. So my question, and we'll start with you and work through the panel, is what is one of the top questions about the opportunities and risks that your team has brought to you?
when we talk about AI, the first thing is, of course, the security implementation around AI. And I look at it from the perspective that as any technology needs to be implemented with the basic security principles, fundamentals like authorization, data management, data security and protection, what you do with data, and etc. But also the other aspect is ethics. What do we do with data? What do we allow it to do, right? And the training mechanisms of the algorithms.
I think some of my team members always ask, because if you're in a personal settings, you're less guarded, but once you're in an enterprise setting, you're kind of scared what your organization allow and not allow you to do with ChatGPT or AI in general, and some organizations don't, and some organizations do with a big consent contract. So there's always a question of what are the extent that I'm able to put things in ChatGPT and experiment, and then also what's going to happen if a data breach happened because of me for the company. What are the consequences for me as an employee? So that's kind of what I see the teams is concerned about from my side, which is, of course, it can be addressed with Cybersecurity 101 and controls in place. But these are some of the questions that the team would ask.
Absolutely. And so after you bring that up, I wanted to ask, how are you thinking about integrating new AI-powered security tooling into your stack while being mindful of data security concerns? Because as we all know, a model is only as good as the data going into it. But I think that there's a peer pressure and a market pressure to absorb next-gen tooling very quickly. And so how are we wrestling with that? And if you want to take that, and then I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern, at least for us as professionals in cybersecurity and helping support our companies in this technology, right? Because we're always trying to understand new technologies and see how we can protect the company at the end of the day. That's our role. And so the biggest concern right now is understanding what is going on with this data, right? You're putting this data in, you could put PII information. Like, there's so many regulations that are just thrown outside the window when it comes to AI or ChatGPT. So the understanding of like what's going on with this data, how this data goes into this model, how this model protects the data, is the encryption in place? What type of data gets filtered out? Like, so really understanding those and assessing them. I call it like data protection 101, and understanding who's the data owner, like who's the data governor, and what are the pipelines of the data. So all of that needs to be assessed. Like any company that is thinking of doing ChatGPT needs to fully understand what is ChatGPT or AI. You need to understand what that AI does, how does that AI process data, what are the controls that they have in place before adopting that and having it in their company and having their employee use it.
Yeah, and it's impossible to bring up data without privacy. So Sherifat, I wanted to turn over to you to what are some key considerations around data privacy, both inside and maybe also for your customers as you incorporate these more advanced tools?
Yeah, so in terms of data privacy, of course, apart from the consequences of what a breach to sensitive data can cause to your organization, you also have to think about regulations. So we have regulations like the GDPR, we have the pipeline in Canada, and a couple of other regulations that are out there about the privacy of data of your customers that you manage. So especially looking at a time where it's hard for any organization to process a system or data end-to-end without involving third parties, we also consider the roles of vendors, right? So you're asking very pertinent questions to your vendor if they are using ChatGPT or AI or any machine learning or any of those technology. What kind of data are they collecting? Can they minimize the data they are collecting? Do they need all of those data that you're sharing with them? Even if they need the sensitive data like privacy, PIIs, personally identifiable information, can they anonymize it? So can you collect data about a set of people but reduce some of the personal details and use synthetic data or something? And how are they storing this data? Who's got access to this data? So these are all of the questions we need to ask about if we are engaging a vendor, because at the end of the day, the organization is accountable. If we suffer a breach as an organization, I'm not going to hold the third party, right? I'm accountable. The penalty is coming to me, not to the third party. I can go after the third party, through my MSA and whatever, but I'll be the one answering to the regulators. So these are some of the things to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cisco's been leveraging AI, ML, machine learning for quite some time. And they have communicated and documented our principles around how we use machine learning and AI in our products, and it's very important to Cisco. I've been with Cisco for 2 years, and one of the things that I have really enjoyed about this company is they believe that privacy is a human right, and that is built into every one of our product lines. And, the whole world basically runs on Cisco. So if you're using our products, you can be assured that we have that transparency of when we are leveraging AI. And I think that word transparency is very important when we start talking about this type of technology, where we need to be transparent where we're using it, and our customers can be transparent back to us. And so that conversation, I think, is a responsible conversation, and something that I personally take pride in, being a part of a company who considers it in that fashion. All of our products are built with privacy and security by design, which means it's not an afterthought. And I've been in the IT business for 28 years, and I can tell you I've worked with many, many different types of developers, and sometimes it is an afterthought. So the fact that we take that very seriously at this company is right in line with my own values.
Great. Well, and you bring up this idea of, as vendors come to market or race to market, I mean, it's like a high octane marketing fuel being poured into the machine right now. And Helen, you brought up jailbreaking, and you also presented earlier today on hacking. So I want to turn to you in terms of, when you're thinking about implementation or questions of that, what are some of the questions that you're posing to vendors to help separate hype from reality? How are you interrogating those claims?
Interesting that you positioned interrogating.
I know.
I think because, like you said, there are a lot of technology that we see in the market that use AI, and definitely there is AI everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, seems like too hype. So when we talk to the vendors, I think it's important to understand what is they trying to solve, like in our organization? Why do they use AI in the first place? Is it the only solution? Is it much better? Or what is the purpose of AI? Because there might be other ways of doing it, and maybe it's just automation at the end. It's not really AI, right? So also then the effectiveness of solution, yeah? What language, what AI they're using, yeah? What technology they're using, the effectiveness, transparency, right? And of course, who holds the accountability at the end? And to the points earlier today, AI is a very unregulated industry still. There is no very specific definition of AI in regulation, in fact, but definitely we need to follow the existing security and privacy controls to work around it.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I think Europe is currently considering an Artificial Intelligence Act later this year. So interesting to know what that would come from. But from GDPR, it's going to be very similar in terms of privacy. So yeah, it's to your point, understanding the vendor, what technology, do you even need to use AI? Is it an automation or AI? Because we know that AI learns from data, right? What kind of data trains the AI? Is it going to be adequate for your use case as your organization, or was it trained from a data that's not really something you need? Who's got access to your data, even if the vendor is using that? And what are they doing with the data? Where are they storing the data? All of those are quite important. And I think because of the dependency of AI on data, once you get your data right, you're classifying your data, then you can easily know what kind of data you can share with a vendor to use for their implementation. A lot of organizations have public data, confidential, critical data, and then if you know that this classification of data will never be shared outside of my organization, then we won't share such with a vendor.
Yeah, so you've both brought up automation, so I'm going to attack this from first a technical lens and then a sort of a bigger question about automation. So APIs are the arms and legs of new models and agents. You know, ChatGPT, other LLMs, they input, output, but they can't do anything unless they are API'd to fetch data from other sources or take action. Has anyone worked with AutoGPT or autonomous agents, right? So if we were doing the intro again, I was doing a webinar and I was joking live on the webinar. I could ask ChatGPT, like, come up with a playlist, like hype music for this webinar. It's got to be 10 songs, no repeats, EDM, go. And it produces it, and because it's got a plug-in, it can generate and then kick it straight over to Spotify, like that, right? And you can do it with Instacart. You can go from planned meals to like actually do the shopping. So given that, I bring it up because API security is already a very fraught area today, even without autonomous agents doing the calls. And I've spoken with some people who have admitted quietly that APIs aren't in their asset inventory. It's not like the first thing they think of. They're just sort of thinking about the hardware and the software. So how are you thinking about that realm of your security strategy? Not just data input, but like how the automation actions through other systems.
I can tell you, I talk to a lot of CISOs all over the world, and one of their top concerns is API management. And, you know, this is going to be another space that's going to pivot that thinking to where we have to be a little more cautious and transparent. When I think about that too, I think about something she said. I just want to add on to, like, the biases. We haven't even talked about the bias that we're going to have to think through and consider for this. But if API management was at the top of the list last year, think about, you know, where it is now and their stack of worrisome things. But it's definitely top of mind for a lot of folks. And there's no simple answer. I was actually in a room with a bunch of CIOs and CTOs, and Amazon was doing a presentation, and you could see their APIs, and they allow for APIs like you can refactor them, you can recreate them, and when the lights went on for all those CIOs in the room, they were like, "What?" Like, it was just this big spaghetti box. Remember that toy that went in and out? It looked like that, and I think they all lost their minds that day. So it's definitely something that we're going to have to generate rules, regulatory and compliance against. I also got a question from a CISO just last week. What are the laws?
Stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, and then certainly with the breach, I recently saw a lot of chatter about a recent breach with AI involvement. And I will tell you, the first lawsuit is really going to dictate where that lands in the U.S., right? But I would say this, there's grave concern with that in particular, API management.
I think I just want to add a little bit into API management because I'm a little bit biased there because I'm a big fan of APIs with my engineers. Well, APIs existed for a long time now.
Sure.
And there is secure ways of you communicating through APIs, which some lazy developers that I love and adore don't do.
Go. You said it. I didn't have to say it.
I said it. They don't do the proper auth, and it has evolved. To any of you that are not knowledgeable of APIs, there's like levels of security in APIs, and not all machines can go to the level of that security where you actually do an end-to-end encryption with these APIs. And so definitely with the AI coming into the picture and you know, these calls and everything is coming into APIs, to be honest. Like the cloud is just an API. Like everything isn't on the internet. It's technically an identity, right? Because you have tokens and they're just firing up all over the world, right? So yeah, definitely as an organization, definitely there should be a management for it, of understanding our lovely developers, what APIs are they using, to what standards are we talking, OAuth, and maybe even more than OAuth standards that are really secure and encrypted, rather than basic auth, just to let you guys know where, clear password or simple password and username just get passed and anyone can like intercept that. So
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to add a little bit to what Pam said as well regarding the rules that we have to build around APIs. An example with GPT, I'm sorry, I've been talking all day today. So the data for ChatGPT is cut off September 2021, right? But there are plugins that are using APIs that can actually scrap data from website live and use that data to gain certain aspects and gain certain responses from the chat using that data. So speaking about APIs, they're like opening up the unknown of even restricted systems.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the great promise here with like natural language commands inside of tooling is also the power of ease and automation, right? You brought up automation earlier. From the vendor side, I've always found it funny that we lean into automation because we assume it will make everyone's life easier. Just do this, and then it learns this playbook and this. And almost 100% of the time, you have a CISO on the call, it's like, no, you can't do that. Like, I can't just like do something in the production environment without checking with other systems. So I guess I really want to ask, what do you see as those possible concerns around greater automation as it is being put into this tooling? That's sort of the natural extension of the natural language ability to communicate with them. And so how are you thinking about either its policies or procedures or what you want to do around automation controls?
The ship has sailed, right? So AI automation or security automation in AI, that ship has sailed. I don't think it's, if anyone benefits, kind of resisting that. I think the better approach is because it does have a lot of benefit, and I'll tell you why I say the ship has sailed, because the attackers are using it. Mm-hmm. So the balance of forces is skewed already. If the attacker is using AI for their attacks and your security team, incident response team is not using it, then you're at a loss, right? So it's better to use it and know how to use it to defend yourself. But the other thing that is concerning, of course, is at the moment, and not all companies, some companies are doing a fantastic job, of course, and they're ahead of the curve. Maybe your run books are not up to the mark when we're talking about security automation with AIs, right? So because someone can actually squeeze in your automation and feed in data that you don't want that output to be and manipulate the model, and hey, you're done, right? So what happens? With cybersecurity, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. So if that happens, what's going to be your kind of detective, recovery flow? It's just your 101. Mm-hmm. But to really update it and really understand if someone gets hold of your data collection or how you input data into that AI to do your cybersecurity assessment or your security assessment, your security operation assessment, what happens? What are your recovery and incident response for those case scenarios? So that would be my sense.
So yeah. We were talking about this earlier. I don't know if this is the question we were talking about, but when I bought a product, it was always for efficiency gain. Like I was always looking to do things faster, stronger, and I think since I was 23 years old, I've been trying to work my way out of a job and hand it over to someone else. The one thing that people fear is change sometimes and the fast pace of technology. And you've got to embrace it and use it to your benefit, because you're right. We're outnumbered, right? They're using it, and they don't have audit, compliance, and litigation, and all the things that come along with our jobs. But I will tell you, like, I find the conversation very interesting when you talk about people and how they feel about this, and is it going to take over my job, and the machines are going to take over the world. you said it best this morning, like, we need humans. We need people to make good decisions. You know, I've been using co-ops and interns for all of the things through the years that my executive advisors didn't want to touch for years, right, that needed to get done. So I think we got to think of it in different terms of it makes us a better at our jobs, and we can get to the right thing, the harder things, the more strategic things. We can start thinking about what the hackers are thinking about more instead of what compliance and other organizations are looking for in terms of documentation. So for me, it's exciting, right? And it's a change in the way that we can run our business. And I strongly believe in the principles that Cisco has published: privacy, security by design, transparency, accountability, all the things. You have to think of it responsively. So I'm not saying irresponsible excitement. I'm saying thoughtful. But if we do it in a way in which is thoughtful, I think it can be very powerful for all of us to do our jobs better.
Yeah. Sherifat, you.
I want to add to that. So from security automation point of view, there are 2 points I want us to consider. One is related to what Esra talked about. So in terms of manipulating the data, right? So I don't want to look at it from just the external threats that we have, but we also do have internal threats, right? So in case of internal threats, you have an unhappy employee or a disgruntled employee who understands the automation, who understands the data. They can poison the data, they can feed, they can manipulate the automation. So an over-reliance on automation, even though automation is supposed to make our lives easier, make it faster, do things properly, reduce human errors and all of that, it can also be manipulated, right, by someone who understands how it works, so they can deliberately. And the most scary part is you may not even detect it because it's already there. So that's one point. The second point is now from the external threats. I give a case of an external threat trying to attack a web application, maybe, and they know that if I continue to poke, this web application is going to try and protect itself by maybe fail close, right? So they could actually launch an attack that will lead to a denial of service. In the bid of the application trying to protect itself, it leads to an issue with availability. So a threat actor could actually leverage on that to cause a denial of service on an application, because the security automation knows that once I see this type of data, it's probably an attack, and I need to fail close to protect myself, but it's going to lead to a denial of service. So those are some of the things we need to consider. While automation is fantastic, I think the humans, we are still there for a reason and will continue to be there, even if automation is a great idea.
Yeah, and several of you brought up sort of cybersecurity basics. I heard 101, I think, several times. And so I want to move from the technology. I think it's really hard to separate the signal from the noise, but I think if you have these sort of founding principles, you can manage the technology. But I want to turn now to process, which I think is probably the frontier that faces the most change as a result of AI tooling. So the growth aspects of a business, right? Sales, marketing, even just cost cutting through back office operation optimization. Businesses are going to rush towards those solutions, right? And security enables business. So as the organization tries to move forward, not just, we've been talking about security tooling, but I'm just talking about AI applications in general now. How do you think the role of the security organization evolves to adapt to enable business with these new tools? Helen, do you want to take that?
Yeah, first of all, we need to also adapt security tools with AI capabilities to be able to detect vulnerabilities and attacks fast. Yeah, but I wanted to also touch on a point of licensing and using AI for implementation of the processes, automation software. While for a bigger company, it is important to review the license of whatever AI they're using. And great example is ChatGPT, when developers started to review the code, right, and the code started to leak. Or another point when they ask AI to generate a code, right, and use that code. Can you really do that for commercial enterprise, for commercial software? And same goes to the startups and small applications. There are a lot of trends right now that there are a lot of business building on top of ChatGPT because it can build something fast and help with that. But then right now, the regulation is not very well established, and maybe there are flaws in some licensing, but eventually it will catch up. And it's good to start thinking before using it. Is it actually something that you want to introduce in your software, in your processes? Do you need to check it with legal and so on?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I believe that cybersecurity is an enabler for business. I know sometimes when business start doing things and the cybersecurity folks are here, and there's that look is like, oh, these guys now are the non-fun guys, right? We want to have fun, and you just, ruin our party, basically. But I think we enable them, and I think the role is evolving because, like Helen mentioned earlier, right? Why you're using it. So us understanding why is the business using it, which is different from security automation, right? Because the business is using it for their needs, right? So for us to be engaged actually in understanding what is the need that they're trying to fill, and for us to understand and to have the capacity to support, we want you to go ahead and build and make money and be more efficient, because that's how we keep our jobs too, right? If the business is not profitable, no one's going to be there. Yeah. So we want to enable you. So we want to also be at that table to understand why you're introducing it, what is the problem that you're solving. So I think the role is going to evolve to be even more engaged, and I think we have been more and more engaged, seeing the trend. Before, no one knew about these cybersecurity folks. They're just like somewhere hidden in the room. But now with like internet and AIs, we're coming to the table, and we're coming to the C-suite and also to the board members. And so I'm seeing more and more engagement for business decisions, which we were not there before.
Okay, so Pam, this next question is for you. I'm going to ask you to put your CISO hat back on. So in terms of process, we're facing something of a paradox. You brought up the fear that automation will take away jobs. Mm-hmm. We have more tooling coming online, more automation coming online, and it is meeting a market that has a serious talent shortage. And yet, as you said, Sherifat, every security leader still wants humans in the seats, right? A human in the loop. So I'm going to paint the scenario and then ask a question. So if you look at Microsoft Security Copilot or Google's AI Security Workbench, the promise of natural language is you could reverse engineer this file, right? So now you don't have to work on it manually. You can say, what are the possible attack paths through this vector? And I guess my question about the process is, if you can do one thing so much faster, in that case, threat model, in an instant, multiple paths that a team might have taken a long time to get through, how is that going to impact internal processes for other things, say red teaming, vulnerability management, patching? Like, you're getting the action so much faster. How does that change your processes?
Yeah, it's interesting because I just read where we're leveraging this type of technology internal to Cisco, and it's anomalies. We're looking for anomalies with this, so I thought that was pretty cool. Vulnerability management. Back when I was in the hot seat, I like to say, vulnerability management. I was using Kenna before it was Kenna. That's a Cisco product now, but that's data science. That's automation. That's changing the conversation with your stakeholders. It's literally pulling out a volume conversation that humans can't understand or even deal with and making it a risk discussion. That's powerful. When you can flip the conversations with your stakeholders, with executives, that's a game changer. And that was 10 years ago. I literally begged people, learn something new. Learn it new. Like, if you're not in code today, that's the future. Like, that's where I tell young people to go. Get into code. That's where we're going. The thing about it is you can, the complicated problem of security and managing what we have to manage in these large corporations, we need these types of tools to focus on the problems that we need to be focused on. Now, again, responsible, transparent. Did I say that enough? By design. Privacy, security by design, right? Like, I'm not saying irresponsible. If you've ever worked with me, like, I would drive you crazy if you worked for me, because I'm the one that was going to ask you all those questions before change management happened. I know, lazy too. But it's just a game changer to put people on a different aspect of the problem that is so complicated. And we're not capable, I'm sorry, we're human. We're not capable of processing that fast. So using it to our advantage is something that I truly believe in.
Well, and you bring up a good point. Human intelligence can just be used differently, right?
Yes.
We're not actual computation models.
Right.
So,
Right.
But you've brought up transparency, and I think you've all brought up implementation and responsibility. So how are you thinking about ethical frameworks for AI implementation? And NIST has released their version 1 of the AI risk framework. But yeah, how are you thinking about that, Esra?
I think it's great, Sherifat, when you mentioned that there is an AI framework coming, and it's great when the government is trying to catch up with this technology, but I urge every company to actually develop their own standards, because I think your use for the AI is unique.
Yeah.
And it is true. You could look at some general standards, of course, but it's good for you to be even more comfortable to understand your use for the AI and what are the risks that are belonging to you and how you're going to mitigate those risks and what controls you're going to put in place. Without that in place, you're kind of flying blind. So your first framework might not be the best one out there, but we're all humans and we learn by trying and trial and error and tweak it. But if you just sit there, wait for government to give you some standards or just use some standards that might be applicable half-half, you're kind of flying half-blind, in my opinion, but yeah.
I can add a little bit. So for to add to that processes and what we should look at, systems that we choose. We definitely need to understand, first of all, what is that in organization overall? What AI are we using? Do we have transparency across? But then not only policies are great, but we need to test the result. And this is very important because there are cases that, the procurement, hiring process, right? When the candidates being scanned and certain decisions are being made. So those algorithms still flawed and they need to be tested. And without testing them, we cannot identify if we actually missed on somebody, right, in a hiring process. So it's very important, not just that, but any solution that we have in organization to test.
I love that, the testing part, and that the one thing that stood out to me in our me researching what I can and can't talk about, because at Cisco Live something's going to be announced. I don't know what it is, but something to do with AI. I'm not talking about it. But the one thing that I will say is the transparency and that conversation with customers. I think that's brilliant. Like, us having that exchange, that dialogue about what we're seeing, what we accept, what we won't accept, I think that is going to help us with the bias in this particular technology. And so we've really got to be open and talk to each other and really exchange our ideas and our views. I love what you said, Helen.
All right, so we'll turn now to the final third. So we're going to focus on people. Raise your hand if you are either entry level or beginning your career in cyber. All right, this part's for you. Question to the panel. How are you thinking about upskilling or training for current team members when we look out on that horizon and see possibly transformative technologies coming online?
I can say something about that. So to me, for AI, it's pretty new. So whether you're new in cyber or you're old, this is a new technology. It's just barely how many years old, right? A few years ago, we're not having talks about ChatGPT only came a few months ago. I doubt it was in existence this time last year, maybe for the beta release, people testing it. So everybody needs the training. So not just the new guys, even the old guys need to know what they're doing about AI. Otherwise, there's a very thin line between using it properly and misusing it. Mm-hmm. So everybody needs that training. And it's important that organization, employers, hiring manager invest in doing it properly. There's a lot of misconception about what AI is, and knowing exactly what it is will help everyone, not just the newbies.
And I wanted to add actually what Pam mentioned a little bit earlier about coding, right? So I would put it in three sections. First of all, upskilling your team for being able to understand the code, maybe even develop certain algorithms in code, yeah? So that's one set. And without coding, we cannot go anywhere. Like everything is going to be, and kids have to learn to code in school, early age. And good that they're already starting, yeah? The second level is security teams. How we implementing control. So what do we need to be aware of? The fundamentals, 101, data privacy, and everything, it's great. And the third level or other level, it's not in any priority, yeah? It goes in a parallel, actually, is the employees of the company, the awareness training, you know, the simple like, what do you do with ChatGPT? How do you use it? Are you allowed to use it? Mm-hmm. What you're allowed to use it for? Yeah, is your organization doing any research and analysis, partnering with any AIs? You know, so this kind of awareness is very important to avoid any penalties later on, or licenses infringement or anything else.
I just want to add 2 points. Well, first, for people who are coming out of school, this is a whole new area in cybersecurity. Congratulations. There's like, it's going to be a big field. I mean, it already is, but it's complicated. So, you have cybersecurity folks in different areas in the world, and this is just going to be another big bucket where we need so much talent. But to add to Pam's point, I really liked when she mentioned that, we need these AIs to make us faster and smarter. And back in the days, you would have these lovely interns and just entry levels do all this manual tasks. Now we can give it to the AI, but the question that comes is, well, now our responsibilities for these interns and these entry level folks are gonna get up there because now the AI is gonna do stuff where they used to do, and so you would need to upscale by learning code early on, by practicing, playing around with these things while you're in college. So when you're coming to the field, you're not like completely green. You're actually able to interact with this AI and able to bring in value even as an entry level and intern. So, yeah.
When you're thinking about the training, are you thinking about allowing labs in your enterprise, collective trainings? I guess I asked that question because I think there is a yearning to learn more, but in a certain economic environment, sometimes it's just so nose down on productivity that sort of stuff gets left to like, well, good luck, go investigate at home.
Yeah, so I never understand people who don't train their employees on the new innovative things because they're doing it without you if you're not doing it with them. And I would rather do it with them. I'm a part of a think tank at Cisco. Like I got thrown in this room and it's AI, generative AI think tank. And I'm like, why do you want me there? Like, what? But it's really just bringing in different perspectives. And we have a futurist in there. She's very vocal. And I love watching her and listening to her. And I would say, be curious about it and make sure that, bring it to your leadership as an opportunity that you're willing to like hold your hand up and do some work in. That's how I got where I have been through my life, is raising my hand and saying, I'll do this after hours, and I'm really curious about this, and how can I help? And those are the types of people that get thrown in those really creative, cool lab think tanks, right? I'm not cool, not anymore, but definitely I would raise your hand, and I would be curious in a way in which helps your organization. So all three of them talked about laws, research, all the things that CISOs worry about. Like, how can you bring something to them that's valuable in this space? And I would definitely spend my time researching how you can help.
Great.
I wanted to say something. I know we've talked a lot about organizational setting, but something occurred to me as you were speaking now, Pam. For those of us on Snapchat, right? There's an AI now.
I'm not on
as
Snapchat.
a friend. Like,
Us?
you're not?
I'm not on Snapchat.
Okay, great. So there's an AI that you had as your, is it an assistant or a friend? Please, you guys know about this stuff, right? And young people are going to that for advice. It's that bad. Like, things they should be talking to their mothers about or their fathers, they are asking the AI on Snapchat. So as a mother, good luck to you if you don't know what it is about.
Not real.
You may be missing out. So beyond organizational settings, these things are entering our personal lives. So it's just, I just wanted to put
Look
that
at the
in.
chatter you caused. Look
My-
at that.
I
Like,
don't
I mean, we're out of control now.
Well, the room is talkative. So I do I have a last question, but I actually want to open up to questions first, and then we'll come back to that question. So by all means, please put your hands up if you have a question, and we have someone coming around with a mic. Yeah, down here.
Mhm.
So, probably I want to ask, in the race of automation, in the race of doing things faster, in the race of securing things, or learning new technologies, new tools all the time, and that's going to go for always, I think. Any of you have seen a scenario where the visibility has lost its importance?
Visibility. Trying to understand that question. So you mean visibility has lost it, so there's no need to see?
Yeah. So say you're automating something,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a time when one person was doing it with his identity on it. Now some tool is doing it for you. So you're losing the track, or you're losing the visibility of who is controlling my network, for that matter, who is controlling my system, who should have access to what limits. Do you see a scenario where we have lost that track?
I think that's hard, right? Any organization doing that has probably lost it all. Yeah, in as much as you want to use AI to make things better for you, the ability in threat detection is amazing and things like that. They can pick it faster than humans would do. You still want to have that visibility. I know the CISOs here, I don't think you want to rely on go to bed at night and leave your AI watching. So I think they've lost it all. Yeah.
I think I want to
own.
add to that because it comes to, we have a lot of tools in our network infrastructure, yeah, and visibility is important, but to your point, if industry have lost, I think there are a lot of challenges to have a transparency oversight of everything that you have, yeah, and especially if it's a complex environment, then you might have multiple tools, but importance is always, from my perspective, been there. It's just that it might be more complex, more difficult to obtain it, and we need to be smart about it. And perhaps certain tools will help us to gain that AI even, right?
CISOs worry about visibility and variability, right? So they're going to worry about it. So
That's not overlooked.
Yeah.
No. Monitoring is important. They need to see.
Any other questions? Oh, we have the mic. Oh, you can pass right.
Over there in the back, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. My question is, I think you're going to get a lot of questions on the same theme, but I know we talked about how AI can do things faster, you know, at a larger scale. Are we at all worried that as humans we will forget how to do the simple things if we become more and more dependent on AI?
Well, I've forgotten a lot. I'm old. I've already forgotten. I mean, we use calculators, right? I use a calculator. Like, how many of you use I mean, I remember a time when we didn't have, you know, these smartphones, right? I don't remember anybody's phone number except for my husband's because I had to teach it to my son. Look, we evolve, right? So probably, I would say probably. Would you say probably? Yeah.
Yeah, which is fine. It's a risk we take, I guess.
Yeah,
to,
my brain
you
will
know,
go somewhere else. Like now I cook.
So now we're utilizing our, so we're just shifting, right? Our focus to something
Yeah.
else. So it shouldn't be something that we're scared about.
Yeah.
We can just, you know, shift our focus to learning something new.
I think a little fear in life is good.
Yeah. I wanted
Keeps
to
you on your
ask,
toes, yeah.
do you remember, have you tried giving maybe a Gen Z, you know those phones we use those days that you have to
Yeah,
Rotary
yeah.
phone.
They don't know what to do with it. But do they know how to handle a phone now?
Oh,
Much
yeah.
better then.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we are just shifting to
True
what you
that.
said.
New times.
Shifting to something better,
Thank
faster.
you.
and,
Okay, so I do want to get to the last question so everyone can walk out here with something to take away to your organization. So we'll go down the line here, and the question is, what top consideration would you have our audience take back to their organizations on 2 timescales? Something to think about within the next 90 days, and something to think about within the next 12 months, which apparently is like light speed. And, you know. So Ezra will start.
Oh, yeah, sure. So within the 90 days, I would say the upscaling and understanding, because you can't attack something you don't understand. So if you can understand what your company has to offer for you to understand what's going on, that would be great. For 12 months, it's to really understand what are the processes, the frameworks, the testing frameworks and validation that you would need to have. Yeah.
Pam?
You know, I would just understand how your organization is utilizing this technology and are you being transparent with your customer base? And then the long term, like how you're using technology and how the laws are being created and are they within the confines of the laws? Because I think that's super important for us to consider.
Yeah, for me, I think to take away, you think about the data, the use of your AI in your organization. What exactly is that AI doing? And then what data do you need to feed into it? Do you absolutely need all of those data? If there are things you can anonymize to maintain privacy, then consider that as well. Just have a rethink about the use of AI and the data that it needs to work with.
I will add very great points. I loved every single point of that. I would like to add from a slightly different perspective. I came from software development myself. So on a team, it's very important to have people who will think about how AI is used at the end. And we talked a lot about technology, business to business, B2B, security tools, right? But there are a lot of tools, AI tools, that are consumer-facing tools. So when we implement that, I would like to encourage everyone to bring into their organizations to think how the data, how the tools are used, are they abusing anything? Is there a ways to manipulate and misuse them? And the great way is to do threat modeling, not necessarily hacking, but really assess those threats and risks in your organization. And from a personal side, there is also how we as individuals use AI, ChatGPT, right? Do we have enough awareness in our friends and family? There are cases that AI can generate impersonation of other people through, for example, text messages. There was a research where AI was generating how 9-year-old would communicate, yeah, and send that text to a 9-year-old to find out where they live. Yeah. So we have to be aware of this aspects and bring the awareness to our network, not only organization, but family, friends as well.
Well, that is all the time we have today. Thank you very much to our panel of experts. And thank you for your questions.